everybody. Welcome to today's session on how to think like a project manager. This is a particularly interesting topic because imagine if you're an alien and you're looking at a human race from afar and you, for some reason, is fascinated with our project management. You read all the books on project management, you started doing the exercises, and you know all the rules and the pitfalls. Does that make you a project manager? Well, the answer is probably not. Because in short, unless you're able to really feel and think like a project manager, it is actually very hard to just go through the motion and become a project manager. And we'll explain a little bit why here. But before we dive into that detail, I'd like to first present our firm's framework for how we help our clients. And it is called strategic business execution. We believe execution excellence is achieved when organizations have four of their major components aligned and work well together. And that includes the value, behavior, and the attitude of the people, having the right competencies for their people and their teams, the core discipline of project management, program management, process improvement, as well as the integrating processes that tie them together. Processes such as managing issues, managing risks, changes, information management, communication, knowledge management. And on the next slide, we have a little bit more of the details that you could look through. We're not going to read through each of the sub-bullets. But here is where we believe how to think like a project manager fits. It's a part of our core discipline. Under the part of the core discipline, we have project management, PMO, process improvement, etc. And how to think like a PM falls into that. So why is it so important to think like a project manager? Because if you know the tactics, you know the tools, you know the procedures, you know even the principles, such as in that example of the alien, does that make you a project manager? And in our experience, the answer is surely no. The reason being is that unless you're there, in that intense pressure cooker called a project, unless you are confronting with issues and decisions that you have to make and there is no easy answer, without understanding that pressure points, without being there and have done that, project management surely is more than just a body of processes, knowledge areas, and the tools and techniques. So how to think like a project manager is a complement to everything else you already know. And by the way, there are more than 6 dimensions. But here we believe these 6 dimensions are by far the most important. So how to think balance? Because you're always in that state of making trade-offs. A decision often have negative consequences. If you decide, for example, on technology to invest more in the design, well, that costs money. If you put more time to development and take it out of testing, the quality of the testing, the quality of the product suffers. So balance, global. Today we live in a global village and often have to work with vendors, customers, or our own team in a virtual environment, in a virtual global environment. Teamwork. Most projects today are fairly complex. It requires a team, not an individual, a team of professionals coming to work together. Holistically. Project manager is a leadership role. It often requires the project manager to take a step back and look at the big picture, more so than just dive into the detailed tasks, and that ability is important. Incentive. This is something we learn from the economics. People are driven by incentives. Realistically, that is one of the most core concepts of being a project manager. On large projects, people lie. Maybe lying too strong. They position things. There are politics in play. There are different power struggles. Project manager have to confront all that and determine realistically the health of their project and where it needs to go. So let's dive into a little bit detail. Let's start with thinking balance. Thinking balance from a project manager perspective requires mental balance. They have to be optimistic. They are a leader. They are people who other team members look up to. And yet, they also have to have a degree of skepticism and sometimes even cynicism. If we're working as a project manager, if we're working with a vendor for the first time, we really don't know. Skepticism is extremely healthy. If the vendor said, well, great, we're making good progress, a simple question could be, can you demonstrate that? Because if you take their words for it, and over time there are small delays piling up or issues that goes unresolved, it could become detrimental to the project. So the first balance is the mental state. The second is the balance between analysis and action. One of the biggest pitfall, I think, in today's decision making is you want more information. You want more timely information, more accurate information, but that could get into analysis paralysis. So this is the trade-off between analysis and action. The final piece is always think in terms of the trade-offs. Because in a project, typically there are limited time. Think of the triple constraint. There's the limited time, there's a specified scope, and specified resources. Well, if the scope started changing, or the user or the customer wanted more features and functions, there is a cost implication, there is a time implication, there's a resource implication. So trade-off becomes essential. A leader have to be able to make tough decisions. And there they may decide and determine and then corral the troop to one set of the decisions, even though it may be offset by others. So for example, we decide that this project is detrimental to the future of our company if we come into the market late. It's a highly competitive environment. What we're going to do is we're going to work longer hours, so sacrifice work-life balance. We are not going to sacrifice quality, but we are going to try to de-scope the lower priority features and functions because they are not as important to the success of the product. Now, that is a set of trade-off decisions. Second piece, think global. Culturally sensitive. Our team members often are distributed across the world. That also means that a yes in one culture may not necessarily be the yes having the same meaning of a yes, let's say in the US centric view of the world. So that requires a little bit more follow-up. Be respectful to various cultures, maintain an open mind. People genuinely will have different ways of thinking. They may have different processes of making decisions or analysis. Embrace diversity. And this is not just embrace in the sort of sense of verbal, I love diversity. It's truly believe that having a degree of creative conflicts because of people with different background or ethnicities or religions brings out the best of people, and hopefully the concluding decision is better than if everybody was just saying, okay, we agree, classic groupthink problems. And of course, genuinely appreciate that difference. That brings to the topic of teamwork. Must have ownership and take charge attitude for the project manager. The ability to take ownership and follow through. Establish an example for others to follow. Must be willing to challenge others, but also be willing to yield to other people's expertise. After all, as project leaders, chances are we're not experts in every facet of the project. There are subject matter experts, whether it's technology or functional, that we must yield to. But that does not stop us from challenging them and pushing them for the good of the overall project. Communicate, communicate, communicate. I think the average survey on the communication for a project manager is about 80%. I have to say, it often feels like 120%. Think realistically, and this requires a high degree of courage. What do I mean by that? Project managers have to be fiercely realistic to themselves, at least to themselves. So in a large, complex, large project, chances are there are politics and there are power plays. Project manager outwardly may demonstrate high degree of confidence that the project is going on track, etc. But deep down, if the project is not so stellar, he or she must be honest to him or herself. Because if they're not, then it becomes an impediment for them to make changes and to improve the situation. So project manager must be fiercely realistic to themselves. What you project outward could be for many different reasons, but honesty to yourself is crucial. Also, you need to be practical when dealing with people. And this is sometimes playing a bad cop and sometimes playing a good cop. Realistically, as you deal with the different type of scenarios, firefights, and people, you have to be willing to wear different hats. By the way, none of this should compromise integrity. If the project is failing and it is not going well, there is no amount of spinning or positioning you could do to make that project suddenly look wonderful. Our latest example of this, of course, is healthcare.gov. Our dear president, unfortunately, is put in a situation that I don't think he wanted to be in. The fifth piece is think incentive. And this is something we learn from the field of economics. Field of economics essentially have a couple of implicit assumptions. One, there's a scarcity of resources. Check. Because I don't think most project managers say we have too much resources. But number two is just as important. People are driven by incentives. What that means is that the incentive could be tangible, intangible. Tangible is compensation, promotion. Intangible could be recognition, respect from peers, sense of well-being. For a project manager, it is important to understand your key project team members. What drives them? Are they looking to do a good job so they could get their next promotion and get more money? Are they looking to learn from this experience of working on this project? Are they looking to get their hands dirty in a new technology and build their future marketability within the company, or for that matter, even outside the company? What are those incentives? And by understanding that, you can then design metrics carefully, sometimes to the individual, and reinforce the right incentive for those people. And then the final piece, think holistically. Project managers are one role on the project that is designed to think big picture. I have been on projects in which every single team members, team leads, thought their track were doing wonderful work, and yet the project is failing. We go to a lot of our client organizations and we help them rescue those projects. And if you go to the team lead level, very few of them will say, oh, no, my QA team is doing a horrible job. No, they will usually tell you, my team just executed 5,000 scripts. We came in on time, approval passing rate of X, which is not so much reflection on their team, but does reflection of their quality of the product. And you talk to a development lead, they'll tell you we fixed these bugs in record time, etc. And yet, how come the project is not going well? This is where the project manager start losing the big picture. Because it is not so much that the individual, in this example, tracks are optimized, it is that the whole project must be optimized. In that example that I just give, the testing, we could ask testing lead a very simple question. Can we launch? Given that you said the passing rate is 99% and the one that failed is 1%, by the way, they're not the biggest errors. Our frequent experience, no. Why not? Because there are other parts of the system we haven't tested yet. But you just told me you tested all these scripts. Yeah, but somebody built those pieces that you haven't written it down well, so we can't apply testing to it. And the development will say something to the same effect. And if you talk to the business analyst group, they say, yes, that happened, but that's because the executive wanted this and we weren't given the resources to do X, Y, and Z. And of course, you could see, this is where now, while each individual track will say they are doing great work, the alignment between them, holistically, the integrated view of looking at the project is they're not talking to each other. So think holistically. Project is often greater than a set of deliverables. There are many interdependencies. That needs to come together, and it is the role of the project manager to bring all these different pieces, players, stakeholders together to make sure that the project as a whole is successful, not just maximizing, let's say, testing or development or design. Well, this ends our presentation for today's discussion on how to think like a project manager. We hope through this presentation you have a deeper understanding of what it takes to be a project manager. It is more than just a set of processes, tools, knowledges. It also embraces a certain way of thinking, communicating, doing that's embedded within each of you. By having the ability to work with people in a team fashion and maximize the team performance across the different culture, the role of the project management and the role of project manager is to create a sum that's greater than the combination of its parts. Thank you, and we hope you have a wonderful day.